Have you ever wondered how one might get a job in the modern White House? What qualifications are required? How much does the position pay? Is there a retirement plan? I'm just kidding. You didn't really wonder that. But I did, so I looked it up. Apparently, plumbers make more than most White House staff. Anyway, the point is, just like today, getting a prestigious job in Imperial China, eunuchs were forbidden from marrying and their duties were menial and dangerous. In another time and place, you could have been a powerful eunuch, a lowly peasant. History is full of possibilities, and if you're willing to open your mind, who knows what you might learn. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Boring History for Sleep. Do you and forget to subscribe and join. US. Next time, for more historical tales. Until then, rest well and dream of centuries past. Good night. They were constantly at risk of being executed for making a mistake or angering the emperor. Despite the hardships, life as a eunuch was still seen as an honor, and the competition to enter the palace never diminished. And the perks weren't so great either. Take the eunuchs, for example. In case you don't know, eunuchs were men who had their testicles removed. Sometimes this was done as a form of punishment, but often it was a prerequisite for certain jobs. Because the process of castration was believed to make men less aggressive, more suited to serving others. And while you might think that we did that sort of thing only in ancient times, this was actually a pretty common practice in many cultures well into the 19th century. In fact, the last official castration of a Westerner was carried out in 1884 when an Italian man was forcibly castrated by Ottoman authorities. In China, the practice began around 200 BC. During the Han Dynasty and continued until the fall of the Qing Dynasty in 1911. During this time, thousands of young men volunteered or were conscripted to serve as eunuchs in the imperial court. Most were poor and saw the position, with its promise of prestige and a noble title. However, the competition was fierce, and so were the requirements. Candidates had to be literate, knowledgeable in mathematics, and skilled in music and sports. They also needed to be strong and healthy, since they would have to pass a series of physical tests. Those who succeeded would then undergo a final test, which was to live for 3 months in a designated brothel and demonstrate their ability to control their sexual urges. If they passed this test, they were accepted as eunuchs and given a noble title. But once they entered the palace walls, their lives became incredibly difficult. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that while history can seem dry and dusty, it's full of fascinating stories that might just surprise you. He is an enigma in the grand halls of history, a eunuch who dared to dream. Enter Wang Shuren, a name that echoes with intrigue in the annals of Imperial China. His story is a tapestry of ambition, loyalty, and transformation. a testament to the human spirit navigating the labyrinth of power and circumstance. Our tale begins in the heart of the Ming dynasty, where a young boy named Wang Shiren found himself ensnared in the intricate mechanisms of the imperial court. Castrated at a tender age, his life trajectory shifted dramatically, aligning him with a destiny intertwined with the rhythms of the palace. Recognizing Wang Shiren's intelligence and potential, Wei Zheng took him under his wing, providing him with the education and guidance that would shape his destiny. Under Wei Zheng's tutelage, Wang Shiren immersed himself in the Confucian classics, mastering the art of statecraft and administration. Balancing the demands of his new role with his traditional duties proved to be a precarious act. He orchestrated the removal of corrupt officials, implemented measures to stabilize the economy, and attempted to rally the populace around their beleaguered emperor. His audacious rise from obscurity had inevitably made him enemies. Powerful figures who saw his influence as a threat to their own ambitions. As the court grew increasingly unstable, his position became increasingly perilous. Aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows, Wang Shiren navigated the treacherous waters of the imperial court with caution. He understood that in this game of thrones, survival often depended on one's ability to anticipate and counter the moves of one's rivals. His efforts, though born out of necessity, transformed him from a low-born eunuch into a beacon of hope. He continued to serve his emperor with unwavering loyalty, his influence remaining a stabilizing force in the midst of the storm. His legacy, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, one man's ambition and loyalty can illuminate the path to greatness. As the dynasty's final days drew near, he stood as a testament to the enduring spirit of those who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. Yet Wang Shiren, ever the pragmatist, rose to the challenge. He became the emperor's eyes and ears, diligently gathering information and offering astute analysis. In the treacherous realm of the imperial court, where alliances were tenuous and enemies lurked around every corner, Wang Shiren's influence grew. He became a pivotal figure, his decisions shaping the trajectory of the crumbling dynasty. He became a silent observer of the political machinations of the court, his eunuch status granting him a unique vantage point from which to assess the strengths and weaknesses of his imperial master. Like many of his peers, Wang Shiren's early life remains shrouded in the mists of time. A past erased, or perhaps deliberately concealed. Decades of corruption and mismanagement had left the treasury depleted and the people demoralized. Faced with this daunting reality, Emperor Chengzhen found himself isolated and desperate for counsel. It was at this pivotal moment that Wang Shiren stepped into the emperor's life. Recognized by his master for his intelligence and loyalty, Wang Shiren was appointed to a position of influence, becoming the unofficial advisor to the young emperor. We know he entered the palace as a castrated slave, a victim of a system that valued obedience and control over individual lives. Within the palace walls, he would shed his former identity, becoming known simply as a eunuch. In the vast and complex hierarchy of the imperial court, eunuchs like Wang Shiran, they were men without families, their roles dictated by the whims of the emperors they served. Yet, within this rigid structure, there were gradations of status. He would have been assigned to a particular department, perhaps assisting in the upkeep of the sprawling palace complex, or serving in the imperial kitchen. Each task was a silent testament to his servitude, each step echoing the constraints of his existence. Yet within these limitations, Wang Shuren's story diverges from the ordinary. Unlike many of his peers, he did not merely acquiesce to his fate. He sought knowledge, learning to read and write. Skills that became his tools of empowerment in a world that sought to diminish him. Eunuchs were categorized based on their duties, ranging from menial tasks to positions of considerable influence. It was a world where power and privilege were doled out in subtle measures, and where survival often depended on one's ability to navigate this intricate social landscape. As a eunuch, Wang Shuren's life would have been regimented. His days structured around the needs of the emperor and the court. His path took a decisive turn when he caught the attention of Wei Zheng, a powerful official known for his sharp intellect and unwavering ambition. When Emperor Chengzhen ascended to the throne, the empire was on the brink of collapse. The weight of this responsibility fell heavily upon the eunuch's shoulders. Throughout the turbulent years that followed, Wang Shuren remained steadfast in his dual roles. Yet, as the Ming dynasty teetered on the edge of oblivion, Wang Shuren's own fate hung in the balance. In the face of adversity, Wang Shuren's resourcefulness knew no bounds. But as the last embers of the Ming dynasty faded, so too did the story of Wang Shuren, the eunuch who dared to rise above his station and become a pivotal player in the fall of an empire. We dig here at the very edge of the Forbidden City. These mounds are all that remain of the imperial palace's outer wall. What stories lie beneath this soil? Stories of ordinary people working, living, dying in the shadow of an emperor. In the year 1900, the last imperial census was conducted. By the mid-20th century, most of the buildings were gone, demolished to make way for new construction or lost to neglect and time. Today, only the carefully preserved ruins remain. And yet, beneath the rubble, the lives of tens of thousands endure. This meticulously carved wooden tablet recorded the details of every household that served the Qing dynasty. Once, the most important building in the empire, the location of the emperor's throne. Beyond, the bell and drum towers stand sentinel. Nearby, the overarching gate marks the entrance to the vast imperial complex. Everywhere, foundations whisper of past grandeur. Elsewhere, the Boxer Rebellion of 1900 left deep scars. The Anglo-French troops occupied part of the Forbidden City after the rebellion's suppression. Later, the Republic of China government used the palaces as storage space. During the Second World War, the Japanese bombed the area. After the war, the government of the People's Republic of China began restoring the site. In 1987, it was opened to the public as a museum. There were palaces, of course, like this one, built during the reign of the Yongjing Emperor. Archaeologists continue to uncover the secrets beneath our feet, adding new layers to the story of this extraordinary place. Its yellow glazed roof tiles glistened in the sun. Its ornate window screens cast intricate patterns on the ground. But life here was not all about opulence and ceremony. Here, too, were utilitarian structures like this kitchen. Its brick oven hinting at the ceaseless need to feed the sprawling court. The scale of the operation is almost unimaginable. A hungry army of cooks, porters, and servers would be needed to feed the thousands who lived and worked within the walls. Across the courtyard, a well-regulated garden offered a respite from the strictures of court life. Its paths hinted at leisurely strolls. Its rockeries suggested quiet contemplation. But beauty was never far from utility here. This decorative lake, for instance, was also an ingenious irrigation system, supplying water to the imperial palace and surrounding areas. Above, the sky peeked through the carefully planted pines. Here, too, were humble arbors, where animals were kept bred and cared for, providing both sustenance and status to those who lived within the city. But what of the people who lived here? Life within the palace walls was highly stratified. At the top were the royals, the multi-generation bloodlines whose destiny was intertwined with the throne. Below them were the palace staff, divided into ranks based on their roles and responsibilities. Servants, clerks, artisans, eunuchs, and concubines. All were carefully ranked and regulated. At the very bottom were the laborers and casual workers, often serving short sentences as punishment or to pay off debts. They came from various parts of the empire, each bringing with them a unique culture and skill set. And across these ranks flowed money, power, and information. The interaction of so many disparate lives resulted in a vibrant, chaotic mix of cultures, and then above it all hovered the Emperor, the Son of Heaven, the center of the cosmos. His whims could elevate or crush. His approval bestowed honor. His displeasure brought ruin. Within these courtyards, the Emperor's presence was everywhere and nowhere. His image on the walls, his words in the scriptures, his spirit in the rituals. The painstakingly written characters tell their tale. A total of 4,300,513 people. Among them, 206 were classified as slaves for life. Their labor, it seems, was a hereditary obligation passed down through generations. Imagine the hands that carved these characters, the minds that planned these columns, the authority that decided their fates. Below ground, Many of the residents here lived and worked within these courtyards, a self-contained urban world. In the year 1911, the Forbidden City was looted, and its contents dispersed. This is the site of the former Hall of Supreme Harmony. And as we walk these paths today, we are not alone. You're strolling through the Forbidden City, pausing at every turn to admire the courtyards, halls, and gardens. Suddenly, a flash of color catches your eye. Through an open window, you glimpse a woman in a flowing robe, her face half hidden behind a screen. And what is her place in this grand palace? Some eunuchs formed genuine friendships with the servants and maids who worked at the court. Others found love and companionship with women from the lower ranks of society. And believe it or not, there were even eunuchs who found happiness and contentment despite their situation. After all, as one eunuch once said, we may not have been born with a silver spoon in our mouth, but we sure as hell knew how to use the golden chopsticks. Hey! So don't underestimate the power of eunuchs in the imperial court. They might have been the unsung heroes of the Forbidden City, but their impact was undeniable. And who knows? Maybe there's a eunuch living next door to you right now, hiding his identity and living a secret double life. You'll never know, unless he spills the beans. Wink. Anyway, see you in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay creative, and stay awesome. Peace. A scheming palace wife, or perhaps an empress holding the secrets of the empire in her hands. Well, she's likely none of those things. She's probably a eunuch. Yep, you heard me right. Even though there's been a big decline in their numbers, there are still thousands of eunuchs living among us today. They lead normal lives, raise families, and even get jobs, just like the rest of us. But occasionally, the whispers of their past catch up with them. And if you ask any eunuch about his days at the imperial court, he'll spin tales as old as time itself. So grab a seat, my friend, and let's dive into the wild world of eunuchs and their secret lives. Eunuchs have been around since ancient times, and their presence at the imperial court was both intriguing and often scandalous. Now, it's important to note that eunuchs were not born as men and women. Instead, they were usually young boys who were castrated for various reasons. Sometimes it was done to prevent them from engaging in sexual activity. Other times, it was because their families needed the extra income, or because they were victims of human trafficking. Now, whether you approve of this practice or not is up to you. But it was a common occurrence in many cultures, including China's. Many of these young boys came from poor families who saw the imperial court as a way out of their situation. Once they arrived at the palace, they received special training to learn how to read, write, and perform various tasks for the emperor. Some eunuchs also served as the emperor's bodyguards, while others worked in the imperial kitchens or as servants. However, despite their usefulness, eunuchs were often treated as second-class citizens. They were not allowed to marry and were forbidden from forming close relationships with anyone outside of the palace walls. If you were a eunuch, your life was pretty lonely. That is, unless you became the emperor's favorite. Then you would be showered with gifts and allowed to enjoy the luxuries of the imperial court. Unfortunately, competition for the emperor's favor was fierce, and rival eunuchs, it was uncommon for eunuchs to form gangs and fight each other tooth and nail. It was a dog-eat-dog world, and only the strongest eunuchs survived. And let's not forget about the power struggles. Eunuchs were often caught in the middle of power struggles between the empress and the concubine. They were forbidden from taking sides and had to remain loyal to the emperor at all times. If they were caught siding with the wrong woman, they risked being banished from the court without a single copper coin to their name. Being a eunuch wasn't for the faint of heart. It took strength, cunning, and a whole lot of luck to survive. But amidst all this chaos, there were rare moments of kindness and compassion. The Forbidden City was a world apart. Its high vermilion walls enclosed not just the emperor's court. Beyond the imperial palace, the bustling markets and humble homes of the common people felt distant. Petals fluttered gently into tiled courtyards, swept by eunuchs with delicate brushes. A pale curtain lifts slightly in the breeze, revealing the shaded corridor of a palace residence. One of many, nearly identical, and yet each carefully arranged for a different woman of the emperor's court. It was ritualized, formal. A eunuch would bring a covered tray bearing name cards. The chosen woman would be bathed, perfumed, clothed in night robes. The lanterns flicker low. Outside, the cypress trees sway gently in the night breeze. The palace, as always, she would be carried, literally, in a blanket, by eunuch stew. The emperor's quarters, no one spoke. No one smiled. And in the morning, she was returned to her chambers. Sometimes with gifts, sometimes with silence. A favored knight could bring promotion, a child, far more. But often, nothing changed. Jealousy lived quietly here, in whispered tones and veiled glances. A slight could mean exile to an unused wing. A misstep might bring endless years in obscurity. Some women died, never having seen the emperor again after their first meeting. Others bore sons who rose to become crown princes, elevating their mothers' names to near sacred status. But all lived within boundaries. The palace was divided, and the concubines could not leave without permission. Letters to family were read and censored. Gossip could be fatal. Even dreams had to be small-contained, measured. Still, within this narrow space, many women found meaning. They formed friendships, subtle alliances, shared secrets. They found solace in poetry. Some kept gardens on hidden balconies, tending peonies and orchids with delicate care. Others turned to Buddhist prayer, finding in its repetition a sense of inner stillness. and the empress, if kind, could be a quiet source of protection, granting small comforts or turning a blind eye to harmless rebellion. In here, the rhythms were slower, quieter, a world made of rituals. On New Year's Day, red paper charms lined the doorways, and women exchanged blessings. Laughter existed, even here. Quiet laughter, bittersweet. But age came quickly in the court. By 30, a concubine might already be considered old. Her influence faded. Younger women arrived. The cycle continued. When death came, it was quiet. The body wrapped in silk. The name recorded with dignity. Some were buried with honors, others forgotten, and the inner court moved on. Still, her presence lingered in an embroidered slipper left behind, in a name etched lightly into the palace register. The last trace of a life, once lived in silence and restraint. But for those who lived within the inner court, life was a soft cage as rigid and confining as the lacquered walls around them. At the center of this hidden world was the emperor himself, a distant figure to most of the women who shared his name but not his company. Only the empress held status by right. The rest consorts, concubines, noble ladies existed within a precise hierarchy. Each title carried small privileges and subtle humiliations. Now, imagine yourself in the inner court. The air is light with the scent of blooming. To outsiders, it may have seemed like a life of privileged silks, servants, and the proximity of ultimate power. A girl might enter the court in her teens, selected from among noble families, or offered as tribute by provincial officials, hoping for favor. She would be dressed in formal attire, taught the rituals of the court, and renamed her. Old life folded up like a worn garment. Her days would follow a quiet rhythm. Waking before dawn, she would perform ceremonial grooming, face washed with scented water, hair wound into elaborate coils, painted lips, delicate jewelry. Meals were brought in with care-steamed rice, clear soups, pickled plum, perhaps a dumpling filled with lotus paste, simple, refined, never indulgent. Time in the harem passed slowly. Reading the classics, embroidering birds in flight, or blooming peonies, always under watch. Every gesture, every word, every movement was seen. And then there were the nights. The selection of a consort for the emperor's bed was not romantic. There were festivals too. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, lanterns floated on carved lily ponds, and sweet moon cakes were shared beneath the harvest moon. Let us leave her now. And so we drift now, away from the high walls and narrow halls of the forbidden city, away from the heavy robes and soft slippers, from whispered ambitions and silent farewells, through the careful, cautious footsteps of eunuchs, whose lives were shaped by absence and duty, but also by quiet routines, fragile hopes, and the slow passage of days in places few ever saw. There was splendor, but mostly ... There was waiting for favor, for change, for remembrance. Through the shadowed rise and abrupt fall of Wei Junction, whose power burned briefly but brightly behind the throne, we descended into the earth itself, walking the spirit way toward the sealed tombs of emperors, whose silence still echoes. And we lingered in the perfumed stillness of the inner court, where women lived entire lifetimes behind silk curtains. We have wandered tonight through 4 quiet chambers of history. Together, these stories remind us that history is not only made by battles and banners. There was sorrow. And now, as you lie quietly in the comfort of your own space, think of the contrast, the safety of your walls, the simple freedom of your breath. The past, with all its stillness and struggle, remains behind us. You are here, now held gently by the present. Let the names and dates fade like ink on old silk. Let your thoughts grow softer, lighter, until they too drift quietly into rest. Let the stories of long ago dissolve into the quiet around you. Thank you for joining us. Sleep well.